We open in Parashat Shemot, a new Sefer, and that new Sefer in the very beginning talks to us about something that we all familiar with, too familiar with, and that is the theory of conspiracy. Pharaoh sees that Am Yisrael are becoming large at numbers. Pharaoh decides that he needs to enslave Am Yisrael for the benefit of himself and the country. But how does he do such a thing to a large group of people without being called for by his own people, by his nation? Well, that's where you bring out the theory of conspiracy. And the theory of conspiracy that Pharaoh tells his people is that Am Yisrael are planning to threaten the land of Mitzrayim and to cause a war against the land of Mitzrayim and to kick out the Egyptians from their land. And that's the way conspiracy works. Usually, you try to plan out a collusion, which means collusion is a deceitful or secret cooperation between people or parties. And therefore, over here, it's the people of Am Yisrael, the party of Am Yisrael, that are planning a collusion against the government, the downfall of Egypt. And you build a conspiracy, a theory that explains the events that you see different from the regular understanding of the mainstream people. Rather, you bring a new understanding to it to show that there's people that are planning different things, and with that you explain all kind of things that are harder to explain otherwise. All kind of things that don't fit exactly the reality. Do you explain it with that conspiracy theory? And this is something that could be a big sell to the people. That's what happened with Pharaoh. He tells them, first of all, that Am Yisrael are becoming too powerful. And there's a reason why Am Yisrael are becoming so powerful. Because they're planning to throw us out of the land. Am Yisrael are not only becoming powerful, but they're becoming also many. You see that Am Yisrael has 6 times more babies than we are. How does that make sense? It does not make sense. Rather, Am Yisrael are trying to produce as much babies as possible in order to become more powerful so they can throw us out of the land and eventually make a war against us. But first of all, you need to make sure that you make Am Yisrael into foreigners, into strangers, that people would not want to associate with them. So Pharaoh does. ויקום מלך חדש על מצרים אשר לא ידע את יוסף. Rashi tells us not that he was a new king. Rather, it was the same king as before that dealt with Yosef. But right now, he made himself as somebody who's a stranger that didn't know Am Yisrael, didn't know Yosef. עשה עצמו כאילו לא ידע, Rashi tells us. That's fascinating. You should make Am Yisrael strangers. Isolate yourself from Am Yisrael. And he tells the following to his people. He tells them over here, there's a collusion that Am Yisrael are planning. ואומר אל עמו, הנה עם בני ישראל רב ועצום ממנו. Look at that. Am Yisrael are becoming עצום, very strong. They're becoming large in numbers, Rav. As I explained before, Chazal tell us that they had 6 babies at a time. Now that you can't explain unless you say that the Am Yisrael are constantly trying to have as much children as possible so they can overthrow the government eventually. So therefore, he tells the following, הבה נתחכמה לו פן ירבה, והיה כי תקראנה מלחמה, ונוסף גם הוא על צוננו. Eventually, when Egypt, which is empire right now, it's the largest empire in the world, and therefore nobody can actually come and defeat Egypt. unless someone within us would rise up and cause a problem. When you have within the people themselves, within the land themselves, within the nation itself, people that want to fight the nation, that could actually overthrow the government and the people at the land. So therefore he says that the fear is pen yirbeh, they become even more. Vayaki tikrena milchama, the first war that Egypt might have, v'nosaf kamu al sonenu, they'll be part of the enemies, but within, which is much more dangerous. V'nilcham banu, they'll fight us, ve'ala min haaretz. What does it mean, ala min haaretz? Rashi tells us that ala min haaretz means alinu min haaretz ve'em yirashua. That's what it means, which means we would be thrown away from our own land. With that he tells the people this theory of conspiracy. Now the people in Egypt understand and they come and join the plan of Pharaoh. Let's kill the Jews, let's indeed enslave them, let's take from them taxes, misim, and so on, and with that they will be powerless. Well, this idea of conspiracy is not a new thing. It started at the beginning of time, as Adam Rishon himself and Chava had already experienced a conspiracy from the Nachash HaKatmoni, the snake. What happened with the snake? When HaKadosh Baruch Hu warned Adam Rishon not to eat from the tree, the snake took that opportunity to say that there's a conspiracy behind it. Why is HaKadosh Baruch Hu not allowing you to eat from the tree? Because he knows that if you eat from the tree, you'll be just like him. This is what the Torah says. Ki yodea, says the Nachash. Ki yodea Elohim. Kadosh Baruch Hu knows. Ki beyom acholchem mimenu. The day you'll eat from the tree, v'nifkechu enechem, your eyes will open, which means you'll understand things at a much greater way. Ve'item ke'Elohim yodeh tov hara, and you'll be like God Himself. Rashi says, Ve'item ke'Elokim yotzrei olamot, you'll be able to create worlds just like HaKadosh Baruch Hu created this world. In other words, the Nachash HaKadmoni tells Chava, don't think that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is any better than you. You are at the same level as HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But there's only one thing that's preventing you from being able to reach His powers, and that is eating from that tree. V'item ke'Elokim yotzrei olamot. Ki yodea Elokim, kol oman soneh et bnei umneto min ha'etz achal ubara et ha'olam. You should know that that's what HaKadosh Baruch Hu did. He ate from that tree. And once he ate from the tree, he received the powers to create worlds. And if you eat from the tree, you'll be the same. And since HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't want people at the same power as he does, therefore, don't eat from that tree. Usually, conspiracies are such that you show that we, the people, you and me, are the underdogs, are the people that are oppressed by those oppressors. And they are planning out things. And that's what happens over here. The Nachash says, you are being oppressed by being prevented from eating the tree that could actually lead you to become just like HaKadosh Baruch Hu himself. He doesn't allow you to do that. And this is something that we, as Am Yisrael, has experienced over and over in history. The history of Am Yisrael is full of conspiracies against Am Yisrael. Whether Am Yisrael are those that poisons the wells at the times of different plagues, and because of that people are dying, and Am Yisrael are not dying, when in reality, now we know that Am Yisrael were always sterile. They always wash themselves, they have netilat yadayim, they have to wash for Shabbat, there's a mitzvah to wash your body, there's a mitzvah to go to the mikveh, and so on. You don't do all kind of things that have to do with filth, where Umot HaOlam didn't have that, so they were much more closer to become sick from different plagues and pandemics that the world have had, like the Black Plague, that they blame Am Israel for poisoning wells, and because of that, so many people around the world have perished, like a third of the population, especially in Europe. A third of the population, even 60% of the population of Europe have perished because of that plague. Who's to blame? The Jews. And they made a whole conspiracy theory that the Jews are planning actually to rule over the world, and that's why they're poisoning people. Another theory is the book that was written 100 years ago, which was the protocol of the elderly of Zion. And the claim was that they found protocols of those Jews that are the leaders of the Jewish nation, which plan out every 100 years how the next 100 years will go about. So they'll make one nation fight against another, and every time people would be at wars, fighting and weakening one the other, well, the Jews are rising up. And until now, many believe in that theory as well. Well, now we holding by a new conspiracy. And the conspiracy started at the beginning of the virus. In the beginning, they said that the virus is planned out in order so you weaken the nations, and there's a new world order, and there's few people that actually controlling the whole world, and they are the one that caused the virus to spread out, so they can eventually come into the complete power, and afterwards they give out vaccines, and those vaccines would have a chip that goes into each person's body, or there's a code that goes, a genetic code that goes into the body, and with that genetic code, each person would be able to be controlled, and you'll be able to actually tell them how to think and what to say and what to do. And not only that, you'll be able to constantly supervise and see what he does at every second of the day. That's, for instance, the reason each person should stay 6 feet apart from another, because when you are at a satellite, you can't see one from another. When they're too close, they have to be a little bit separate. Then you can detect who's who with the coding that you have, and so on and so forth. Conspiracies never end. But you need to know that conspiracy is not a Jewish thing. As we see in the Torah, Jewish ideas are straight. You don't have to think too much of things that are the human imagination. You have to see things as the reality. If you aren't sure what the reality is, see what Gdolei Israel say. See how Gdolei Torah lead you. They know how to detect, how to see between something that is true and something that was a creation of the human mind, that would be as nice as it is, and as promising as it is, and as scary as it is to us, because the conspiracy is always against us, against the government, or the government against the people, and it's always conspiracy of colluding few people together in order to fight against the regular person, as now it's about eliminating about a large amount of the world and controlling them. It's a new world order, and so on and so forth. I'm not going now into the different understanding of the theory that came now about the new conspiracy, but we see that conspiracies are as old as the world is.